The stars shimmered like diamonds in the vast darkness of space, their cold light stretching endlessly over the sector known as Velkar 7. It was a quiet place, mostly inhabited by traders, miners, and a few scattered military patrols. The Galactic Council had designated it as a low-risk zone. Nothing important ever happened here. That was why the sudden appearance of an unknown warship sent shockwaves across every radar station in the system. The ship had not been detected approaching. There had been no warp signature, no transmission, no warning. One moment, the sector was as peaceful as ever. The next, a massive metallic form loomed over the outer edges of the system, its dark hull absorbing the weak light of the surrounding stars. It was like a ghost ship, silent, unmoving, yet terrifying in its presence. On the bridge of the Velkar 7 security outpost, Officer Rylak stared at the blinking red dot on the holographic display. His reptilian fingers twitched nervously as he tapped on the console, enlarging the image. The ship was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Its structure was sleek yet imposing, built for battle but carrying no identifiable markings. No faction, no insignia. "Commander Trell," Rylak called out, his voice uneasy. "We have an unidentified vessel in the sector. It appeared out of nowhere." The commander, an older Xelvan with gray scales and sharp eyes, stepped forward, his expression darkening as he observed the display. He had served in the Galactic Defense Fleet for over 20 years, and he had seen countless ships from different civilizations. But this one was different. "Scan it," he ordered. "Find out who they are." The system hummed as the outpost's scanners attempted to penetrate the mysterious warship, but something was wrong. The readings came back distorted, the data scrambled as if the ship itself was rejecting their scans. "Impossible," Rylak muttered. "It's blocking our sensors." Commander Trell narrowed his eyes. "Send a transmission. Demand identification." Rylak quickly activated the comms channel. "Unidentified vessel. This is the Velkar 7 security outpost. You are in restricted space under the protection of the Galactic Council. Identify yourself immediately or prepare to be intercepted." Silence. No response. No movement. The warship just floated there like a shadow in space, as if watching them. The outpost crew exchanged nervous glances. Ships didn't just ignore Council authority. Not unless they had a reason. Then, without warning, the ship moved. It was subtle at first, a slow rotation, like a predator locking onto its prey. Then, in an instant, it surged forward, not at an attack speed, but with a controlled precision that sent a wave of fear through the station. "Commander, it's approaching us," Rylak shouted. Trell clenched his jaw. "Prepare the defense grid. If they come any closer, we will fire." But before the weapons could be activated, a transmission finally came through. The signal was old, crackling, as if transmitted from a ship lost in time. A deep mechanical voice spoke through the speakers, and the words sent a chill down everyone's spine. "This sector is no longer under galactic control." The room fell silent. The message was not a request, not a negotiation. It was a declaration. Commander Trell felt a cold weight settle in his chest. "Who are you?" he demanded, forcing his voice to remain firm. There was another pause, a crackle of static. Then came the answer. "We are human." A collective gasp spread through the control room. Rylak felt his heart pound against his ribs. Humans. The name alone carried weight. The species that had once been part of the Galactic Council. The species that had vanished centuries ago after their disastrous war with the Council forces. The species that, according to history, no longer existed. And yet, here they were. The warship came to a halt just outside the defense perimeter of the station. No weapons were fired. No demands were made. It simply waited. "Commander, what do we do?" Rylak whispered. Trell swallowed hard. He had seen many things in his career, but this was something beyond his experience. "We inform the Council," he said finally, "and we pray they have an answer." Outside, the human warship remained silent, an unspoken threat hanging in the void. And as the stars flickered around it, one thing became clear: this was only the beginning. The news spread like wildfire. Within hours of the warship's arrival, every major faction in the sector was aware of its presence. Panic rippled through the communication networks, reaching the highest levels of the Galactic Council. On Velkar 7, traders abandoned their routes, smugglers vanished into deep space, and military commanders issued emergency orders to prepare for a potential conflict. The mere mention of humans sent a cold wave of fear through the alien civilizations. Humans were supposed to be extinct. For over 200 years, the official record stated that the Terran race had been wiped out after their disastrous war with the Council. The war had been brutal, but in the end, the humans had vanished. No survivors, no hidden colonies, no sign of their once mighty fleets. Yet now, one of their warships had appeared in the heart of Council space. On the bridge of the Velkar 7 security outpost, Commander Trell paced back and forth, his claws clicking against the metal floor. His officers worked frantically, intercepting transmissions and trying to analyze the warship's movements. "Any response from the Council?" Trell asked, stopping near Rylak Station. "Yes, sir," Rylak replied, his voice tense. "They are conflicted. Some want to send a diplomatic team. Others want to launch a full-scale attack before it's too late." Trell clenched his jaw. "Idiots. If this ship is truly human, then we have no idea what it's capable of." Just then, an alert flashed on the screen. The warship had begun moving again. "Where is it headed?" Trell demanded. Rylak's fingers danced over the console, analyzing the trajectory. His eyes widened in shock. "Sir, it's heading straight for the trade hub on Nylos 4. The trade hub was the largest in the sector, home to thousands of ships from dozens of species. If the human warship attacked, it would be a massacre. Trell didn't hesitate. "Send a warning to Nylos 4. Tell them to evacuate immediately." Rylak hesitated. "Sir, what if it's not attacking? What if it's—" "I don't care," Trell snapped. "We are not taking chances. Send the message." As the warning was transmitted, the Council finally made its decision. A fleet of 50 warships was mobilized. The most powerful armada in the sector was being sent to intercept the unknown vessel. The order was clear. If the human ship refuses to surrender, it must be destroyed. Back on Velkar 7, Commander Trell watched the warship on the screen, a sinking feeling growing in his chest. The Council thought they were in control of the situation. But Trell had seen the old records, the classified reports from the last war. He knew the truth that most have forgotten. Humans never ran. They never surrendered. And if this warship was truly a remnant of their kind, then the entire sector was in danger. The human warship moved silently through the void, its dark hull absorbing the faint glow of nearby stars. It had not fired a single shot. It had not made any aggressive moves. Yet, its presence alone had sent an entire sector into chaos. On board the bridge of the HSS Revenant, Captain Elias Voss watched the incoming transmissions on the screen. The aliens were panicking. Ships were retreating from trade routes. Planetary defense systems were going into high alert, and a fleet of 50 Council warships was now heading straight toward them. Elias smirked. "Predictable." "Any response from the Council?" he asked, leaning back in his chair. Lieutenant Juno Kane, the ship's communication officer, shook her head. "No direct messages. But they've issued an order. Either we surrender, or they destroy us." The bridge fell silent. No one was surprised. Humanity's history with the Galactic Council was soaked in blood. The last war had ended in disaster, and the Council had ensured no human presence remained. Or so they thought. Elias turned to his weapons officer, Lieutenant Rourke. "Weapons status. Fully operational," Rourke confirmed. "They have numbers, but we have the advantage in tech." Elias nodded. The Revenant wasn't just a warship. It was a masterpiece of human engineering. An experimental vessel built in the final days of the war. It had been designed to survive against impossible odds. And now it was the last remnant of a forgotten empire. "Captain," Juno interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from Nilos 4. They're demanding to know our intentions." Elias considered for a moment. The trade hub was neutral ground. If the warship fired first, it would confirm the Council's worst fears. But if they did nothing, they risked being surrounded. He turned to Juno. "Transmit a message. Keep it simple." She nodded and opened a channel. Elias took a deep breath before speaking. "We are not here as enemies. But if you force our hand, we will remind the galaxy why you once feared us." The message was sent. Now, all they could do was wait. On Nilos 4, Commander Trell listened to the transmission. His hands trembled as he replayed the message. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. The Revenant had no fear. It had no doubt. And if the Council made the wrong move, the sector would burn. The Council warships formed a blockade around HS's Revenant, their weapons locked onto the lone human vessel. The Galactic Council had always viewed humanity as a dangerous anomaly, one that had been erased from the galactic stage decades ago. Yet here it was, a ghost from the past, standing defiant in the heart of their territory. On the bridge of the Council flagship Borleth, Admiral Kellen observed the situation with narrowed eyes. He was a veteran of the human wars, one of the few survivors who had fought against the Terran fleets. He knew the stories. He had seen firsthand what humanity was capable of. And that terrified him. "They refused to surrender," his second-in-command, Captain Vec, reported. Kellen's claws tapped against the metal armrest. "Of course they do. Humans never surrender." He let out a low growl. "We cannot allow this warship to remain in our space. Destroy it now." Across the blockade, plasma cannons powered up, missiles locked onto their target, and energy shields flared into full strength. Inside the Revenant, alarms blared as the ship's AI calculated the incoming threat. "Captain, they're charging weapons," Juno called out. Elias Voss sighed. "I was hoping they wouldn't be this stupid." He turned to Rourke. "Shields up. Weapons hot. Let's remind them who they're dealing with." Outside, the Revenant didn't move. It didn't try to evade. It didn't even appear to react. Then, in an instant, the warship vanished. Admiral Kellen's eyes widened. What? Where did it go? Before anyone could answer, a massive energy surge lit up the battlefield. The Revenant reappeared behind the blockade, its cannons already firing. Blinding blue streaks of energy tore through the Council fleet. The first enemy warship exploded instantly, its shields useless against the human weaponry. The second ship suffered a worse fate. Its engines disabled, it spun out of control, crashing into its allies. In less than 10 seconds, the entire formation was in chaos. Admiral Kellen gripped his chair, his mind racing. Impossible. This power. A new transmission cut through the noise, broadcasting on all channels. It was Elias Voss. His voice was calm, almost disappointed. "We gave you a chance. You chose war. Now, you'll learn why your ancestors feared us." And with that, the Revenant moved again, disappearing into the darkness, only to reappear right in the middle of the enemy fleet. The real battle had just begun. The battlefield was in chaos. The Revenant moved like a ghost, phasing in and out of existence, striking without warning. The Council fleet had been confident in their superior numbers, until now. Admiral Kellen watched in horror as another one of his ships exploded, torn apart by human weaponry that defied all logic. His officers shouted, trying to regain control, but it was useless. The enemy wasn't just powerful, they were playing with them. "Admiral, we're losing ships too fast. Their technology." Captain Vec hesitated. "It's beyond anything we've seen before." Kellen's claws gripped the armrests. He had underestimated them. He had thought humanity was just a remnant of the past, a forgotten race with no place in the galaxy. He was wrong. On the Revenant's bridge, Elias Voss remained calm. The Council had made their choice. Now, they would face the consequences. Juno, he said, disable their flagship's weapons. A single shot from the Revenant's disruptor cannon streaked across space, striking the Vorlath with pinpoint accuracy. The Council flagship shuddered violently, its weapon systems instantly failing. Panic filled the enemy comms. "We've lost all weapons." Voss leaned forward, his voice steady as he spoke through the open channel. "Your fleet is finished. Admiral, stand down or be erased." Keln hesitated, surrendering to humans. It was unthinkable. But refusing. That meant certain death. As he struggled to decide, the Revenant's engines flared, and the warship vanished again, this time appearing directly above the Council homeworld. A new message echoed across the entire system. "You tried to erase humanity. Now, the galaxy will remember us." The war was no longer a possibility. It had already begun. The moment the Revenant appeared above the Council homeworld, every major species in the galaxy froze in terror. From the orbital defense stations to the planetary leaders, the realization was immediate. Humanity was not extinct. They had returned, and they were unstoppable. Panic spread through the Council chambers as diplomats, generals, and admirals shouted over one another, desperately searching for a solution. "This is impossible. The humans were wiped out," one senator cried. "They should have been," another hissed. "But now they're here, and they have a warship that outmatches our entire fleet." Admiral Keln's face was pale on the emergency transmission. "They gave us an ultimatum. Surrender or be destroyed." The Council leader, Supreme Chancellor Varkos, slammed his fist against the table. "We cannot surrender to them. We must fight." "Fight," Keln interrupted, his voice sharp with barely contained rage. "We tried to fight. Our fleet was torn apart like paper. If we continue, the Council will fall before the cycle ends." Varkos hesitated. The truth was undeniable. The Revenant wasn't just a warship, it was a message. Humanity had survived. Humanity had evolved. And now, humanity was angry. The entire Council sat in silence, realization sinking in. For centuries, they had told stories of humanity's defeat, their so-called extinction. But those stories were lies. Now, the entire galaxy watched in horror as the truth unfolded. The humans had returned, and they were here to take back everything. The Revenant remained in orbit, its dark hull reflecting the light of the dying stars. Every major faction in the galaxy now watched in stunned silence. Humanity, thought to be long gone, had returned, and they were holding all the power. Inside the warship, Captain Elias Voss stood before the main screen, his cold gaze locked on the Council fleet that had dared to stand against them. Their ships were crippled, their defenses shattered, and now they were at the mercy of the very species they had tried to erase from existence. A transmission from the Council homeworld flickered onto the screen. Supreme Chancellor Varkos appeared, his usually arrogant expression replaced with sheer desperation. "Captain Voss, we made a mistake." His voice trembled. The Council was misguided. Voss didn't blink. Misguided. His voice was calm, but the entire bridge felt the weight of his words. "You didn't just misguide yourselves. You hunted us down. You burned our worlds. You slaughtered our people and erased our history." The silence on the other end was suffocating. "We were afraid," Varkos finally admitted, "afraid of what humans could become." Voss let out a cold laugh. "You were right to be afraid." The Revenant powered up its main cannon, a weapon unlike anything the Council had ever seen. The sheer energy reading sent waves of terror through every military leader watching. One blast from this ship could reduce an entire planet to dust. "Listen carefully," Voss said, his voice sharp as a blade. "We are not here to conquer. We are not here to rule. We are here to remind you of what you did." The Revenant's main gun charged, then, at the last second, powered down. A warning. A message. Voss leaned in closer to the screen. "From this day forward, humanity is no longer your prey. We are no longer your victims. His eyes narrowed. We are your reckoning. With that, the transmission cut. The Revenant turned, leaving the shattered remains of the Council fleet behind. Every species in the galaxy watched as humanity vanished into the darkness of space, leaving only one thought in their minds. The humans had returned. And next time, they wouldn't be so merciful. The Revenant disappeared into the void, its shadow still lingering over the shattered Council fleet. The silence that followed was deafening. Across the galaxy, leaders, generals, and rulers gathered in secret, their whispers filled with one terrifying realization. Humanity was back. On the Council homeworld, Supreme Chancellor Varkos sat in his war chamber, his claws digging into the stone table. His advisors stood around him, their faces pale. No one spoke for a long time. The screen in front of them replayed the last moments of the human warship's transmission. From this day forward, we are your reckoning. The words echoed in their minds, heavier than any fleet they had ever faced. One of the military generals finally broke the silence. We should prepare for war. His voice was firm, but everyone could hear the underlying fear. Varkos shook his head. No. His eyes burned with something deeper, dread. You saw what they did. That wasn't war. That was a warning. Another advisor leaned forward, his voice shaking. And what if we ignore it? For a moment, Varkos didn't answer. Then, slowly, he exhaled. Then the next time we see them, it won't be a warning. Across the galaxy, other species were coming to the same conclusion. The great empires that once mocked and hunted humanity were now meeting in hushed rooms, planning, calculating. Should they try to ally with humans? Should they hide? Should they strike first? But deep down, they all knew the truth. There was no first strike against something like the Revenant, against something like them. Somewhere in the darkness of space, the human warship continued its silent journey. It had delivered its message. Now, it was waiting, watching. And the galaxy knew one thing for certain. Humanity had returned, and the universe would never be the same again.